Hello everyone, this is Armstrong Williams on the right side. Armstrong. Don't curse, speak English. Armstrong. Virtuous society. Armstrong. I dare you to listen. Hey, turn it up. Hey. Armstrong. Get on the right side. Armstrong. Elevate your mind. Armstrong. I'm Armstrong Williams on the right side. Armstrong. Yo, man, it's your boy K.O. And you're tuned into the most conservative of our brothers. The Armstrong Williams Show. Please give me a break. Grow up. You know, from time to time we have guests who are regulars on the air, but they're always by telephone. They're never in our studios. And, you know, there's something magical that goes on in the studio when you can have a guest. And so Evan Nierman is truly our Israeli expert. He owns Red Banyan out of Florida. We're going to hear more about that. And so, you know, we like to sort of really introduce our audience to our commentators. In fact, Evan and I are going to do this speaking tour coming up in 2013, which you will hear more about. You just visit our website and all of our media platforms. But Evan, I put Evan on the spot because Evan just happens to be here to visit. But everybody knows, I mean, if you got something to say, and if you're a big component of the Right Side platform, you just cannot come to our house and not being just thrown on the air without any discussion. Evan, welcome to the Armstrong Williams Show. You got to get closer to the mic like your kids. Oh, yeah, you go. You got it.
I'm with you. Good morning, Armstrong.
Good morning. So it's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you, too.
Good to see you. We met in Israel.
We did indeed. That was probably 7-8 years ago at this point.
Oh, no. It's like 3 years ago.
No, I'm afraid it's 7 or 8.
Really?
Time flies when you're having fun.
It was that long ago?
It was.
Oh,
It was at least 5 years ago.
Really? Okay. I mean, I thought it was just 2 years ago.
I'm going based on my anniversary with my wife. I believe I had only been married for a couple of years when I met you, and I'm coming up on 10 years.
10 years of marriage? No, you had only been married a couple of years. Wow. How's the family?
Family is doing great. Thank God. Kids are healthy. They're happy. Wife's doing great.
2 kids?
2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl.
1 boy. How old is the boy?
Boy is coming up on 6. The girl's coming up on 4.
Oh, wow. Nice age spread there. Give us the latest on what's going on in just the whole Middle East. Morsi trying to seize power. It's not working out for him. There seems to be a calm in Gaza, the Middle East, except when Israel announced what they wanted to do with the settlements, and there was an outrage. Take us behind the scenes.
Well, you may be seeing calm at the moment, but I would describe that as a calm before the storm. And it may be calm on the surface, but beneath the surface, there's a lot of movement. I'd liken it to maybe lava below the surface. I guess technically it's magma when it's below the surface, but circulating wildly with the potential to get very hot and then ultimately going to lead to an explosion.
Explain that a little more.
Well, in Egypt, as you talked about, Morsi is in power, and at the moment he seems to really be testing the waters as to how far he can go in terms of usurping powers and exerting himself. You've got a radical change between the way that Israel and Egypt, which inked a peace treaty decades ago, the dynamic has completely shifted in a post-Mubarak world. Meanwhile, to Israel's north, you have very dangerous developments in Syria. I believe that Bashar al-Assad is really on his last legs at this point, and the international consensus has really become Assad has to go. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And a lot of the news right now is focused upon who's going to be securing Syria's chemical weapons stockpiles. Is there a red line that could force the U.S. or other allies to act militarily to make sure that those weapons are not used either against his own people or transferred to terrorist groups such as Hezbollah, which is based in Lebanon? You've got a quiet at the moment between Hezbollah and Israel, but always the potential for conflagration. I think Hezbollah is holding its breath right now and seeing how things shake out in Syria. And then meanwhile, over on the east, to the east of Israel, in the West Bank, you've got the Palestinians making bold moves to try to assert themselves. There was this whole charade recently with the Palestinians trying to achieve a certain degree of recognition at the United Nations. Doesn't really fundamentally change anything on the grounds, but complicates the potential for peace between the Palestinians and then the Israelis. And then you've got Jordan, where King Abdullah recently visited the West Bank in a show of support for the Palestinians. There, it's an interesting dynamic that isn't talked about a lot, but there are huge populations of Palestinians who are living in Jordan. And for the king, in order to maintain his power and keep his position, he has to be very careful about what he shows to what's known as the street, and give the appearances that he's strongly backing the Palestinian people and their aspirations for statehood, while at the same time wanting to cooperate with Israel behind the scenes, wanting to make sure militarily that there's nothing going on between those countries, that the peace between them continues. Further to the east, you've got Iran, which, as we all know, is marching inexorably toward a nuclear weapons capability, although it's facing great difficulties now because of sanctions that have been imposed against them, which have increasingly taken a real bite. So you've got this dynamic where the Middle East may be quiet at the moment, and quiet only by the standards of the Middle East, because, think about it from an American perspective, things are always really on the edge and really hot over there versus the relative peace that we get to enjoy here along our borders. So it's interesting times. It's always interesting in the Middle East, and there's no real way to know which way things are going to shake out in the coming months.
Let's go back to Syria and the sarin gas, and the fact if they were to unleash it, how millions of people could die. And what is even more dangerous, as you mentioned, is that it could get into the hands of terrorists, which could try to bring it here to the American soil. And can you imagine detonating one of those in one of those major city hubs in the United States? So obviously, what kind of leverage does anyone have?
Well, I think that's a good question. And to my way of thinking, leverage goes out the window when you push a rabid dog up against the wall. And the rabid dog in that analogy is Bashar Assad, who is going to do whatever it takes at this point. I think that he sees that the writing is on the wall, and he is not going to continue to be the dictatorial leader of Syria. And when you push someone who, above all else, is looking for self-preservation, you don't really have a lot of leverage because they're desperate. And on a personal level, I believe that he's growing increasingly desperate.
I think one of the most fascinating aspects of this is that you mentioned Saudi Arabia.
No, I didn't mention Saudi Arabia.
Tell us why.
Because at this point, the Saudi Arabian rulers have a pretty strong grasp on power at this point, and I don't see a potential for a sea change in Saudi Arabia.
Why is it that they have such a grip on power versus the rest of the Middle East? That's okay. Just give us your wisdom.
I think the Saudis are in a unique position because unlike a lot of these other Arab regimes in the Middle East, some of the other ones, they have tremendous natural resources that they can draw upon. They've got tremendous economic leverage. And I do think over the past decades, unlike some of the countries like Syria or like Iran that have looked to be very confrontational openly with the West, Saudi Arabia has actually done a fairly good job of ingratiating itself with the leadership in the United States and the West.
Another area which is also intriguing that you did not mention is Turkey.
Turkey is a bit of a wild card, and there was a time in recent memory when Turkey had very strong relations with both the United States and a very strong working relationship with Israel. And if you were to say, what was the one Muslim country that had the best relations with Israel, you could point to Turkey and say,
and then
look,
the flotilla came along.
A flotilla was part. I wouldn't describe the flotilla as the single event. There were a number of events that led up to it, but certainly the flotilla. And for those listeners who aren't familiar with exactly what we're talking about, Armstrong, you follow all these issues so closely. This was during a time of right after Hamas, which is a terrorist organization headquartered in Gaza, had taken over political control in Gaza, a group of so-called activists boarded what they were describing as a humanitarian flotilla, and they were going to float across the ocean and bring much-needed supplies to the men and the women of Gaza, who they asserted were not having access to the materials they needed. Now, set aside for the fact that Israel, even though it wasn't dealing directly with the Hamas leadership, was ensuring at all times that humanitarian aid continued to enter Gaza through Israeli checkpoints, that was screened for weapons and whatnot, but was food, medicines, necessary medical care, supplies. All of that was continuing to flow to the Hamas-led Gaza Strip. But these activists, in their zeal to help their Palestinian brothers, boarded this flotilla. Israel warned them that they were not going to be allowed to dock, that this was that there was no need for this. This was a needless provocation. And when Israel attempted to intercept the flotilla before it made it to Gaza, the Israeli soldiers were surprised by what they encountered, which was a level of hostility, and the soldiers who were boarding the flotilla were attacked with metal pipes, and it quickly escalated into an out-and-out fight. So much for a peaceful, aid-oriented flotilla. Instead, it turned into an attack. Israel soldiers were forced to defend themselves, and it really did exacerbate the growing rift between Turkey and Israel.
Hold that point. Evan Nierman, Red Banyan, Florida. He's in the house. I'm Armstrong Williams, and the man is working. We'll be back.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933. Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
And welcome back. Finish that about the political Islam.
Sure, it's a question, Armstrong. The time wasn't too long ago when there were real questions about what would a shift in the Middle East from dictatorial regimes to an embrace of some form of democracy, what would be the implications of that? And that was really the crux of what the Bush administration, as they were pushing to bring democracy to the Middle East, and there were a number of advisors close to the president who believed that democracy could really take hold in the Middle East to an extent that it never had before. And it's continued into the Obama administration as we've seen what was described as the Arab Spring, which was initially covered by the media as a great awakening of the Arab people, them taking the initiative and deciding they were going to throw off these leaders who had dominated their lives and instead move towards a democratic system. But one of the challenges has been when you open up this Pandora's box and you enable the people in these countries to choose their own leadership and to exert a form of democracy, what happens when the groups that they choose as their leadership are Islamic parties, who in many ways their ideology runs counter to the whole notion of democracy? And what do you see it in Egypt now? They've elected the Muslim Brotherhood. They've elected a party which is predicated upon Islamic principles, which aren't necessarily always in complete alignment with democratic principles. And so you end up with this catch-22. The same thing happened within the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. The Palestinians were allowed to elect their leadership, and they chose a terrorist organization who believes that Islamic law is the ultimate goal and would like to see Islamic law spread through all the countries in the Middle East, and that was who they elected in their quote-unquote democratic election. So it's an amazing conundrum.
But it seems as though the people in Egypt has turned on Morsi in his thirst for not only to become a dictator, but immune from any kind of a punishment, of any kind of authority, any kind of questioning. The people saw something different, and they rebelled against it.
They did. And I think the Egyptian people, they know what a dictatorship looks like. They know what a power grab looks like because Mubarak was the master. And
but not like Morsi. This is different, not like Morsi.
This is completely different. Yes. Because Mubarak was willing to be the strong man and to say, it's my way or the highway. And there was no pretense about it. Everyone knew who was in charge. He brutally repressed the opposition. There was never any real attempt to make it seem like Egypt was a democracy. It wasn't. He got, in upwards of 95 or 98% of the vote when they would have these, straw polls and.
But let me stop you, because obviously there is a dichotomy in what you're talking about now. On the one hand, you say when you celebrate the people, when you don't have dictators like Mubarak, they end up choosing people who are Islamic, and they are counter and totally out of alignment with democracy. And some of these people believe in terrorism, not publicly, but privately they support it. But on the one hand, you had someone like Mubarak who cooperated with the United States, was paid to do so, and the only way he could keep it organized and from exploding was to rule with an iron fist. So what do you say to that?
The Middle East is a dangerous place, and only the strong survive. So I think what you find in the Middle East, and it's hard for us as Americans to grasp it because the reality that we live in is so fundamentally different from what the people experience on a day-to-day basis living in the Middle East. But I would say, consider the principles that are talked about by Machiavelli and this notion that it's better to be feared than loved as a leader. And in the Middle East, that's so true. Only the strong survive. So this question of Morsi, he's a fighter. Make no mistake about it. But I would posit that he's sly as a fox as well.
But they all are.
Many of them
they must be.
Well, they're smart enough to find a way to get power, and then they have to be smart enough to find a way to keep it.
Why did he grab power while negotiating the calmness in the Middle East crisis, the United States gave him leeway to seize power. What was his ultimate goal?
Well, you'd have to ask him, but I'd say you test the waters. You throw a weather balloon up there. You see what the reaction is. You find out how much can you get away with. It's kind of like the kid who's at home, and the mom is looking at him out of the corner of her eye, and the kid has got his hand in the cookie jar, and he takes a little bite. Mom doesn't say anything. And if she doesn't say anything, he's going to take a whole fistful. Similarly, Morsi, he's in this new position, uncharted waters. He wants to see how far can he go, how far can he reach before the mom, in this case the United States or the international community, is going to slap his hands and say, we're warning you, we're watching you, that's not okay.
You know, the United Nations, where have they been in the midst of this past crisis, not crisis, and future crisis?
Well, the UN and the UN General Assembly, I mean, talk about a joke. Tens of thousands of people have been massacred by a heartless dictator in Syria. And what has the UN really done? Now, they sent Kofi Annan over there and it failed. They've made statements, but nothing's changed. And yet the UN, at any opportunity it has, it looks for an opportunity to jump down Israel's throat. And we look at this recent approval of a resolution to give increased recognition to the Palestinian Authority. So the Palestinians have refused to negotiate peace with Israel for years now. And the Israeli Prime Minister has said, without preconditions, come to the table. Let's hash out our differences. Let's figure this out. Let's do a deal. And the Palestinians have flat out refused. So what has happened? Has the international community said to the Palestinians, you need to negotiate. You've got to work this out? No. They've said, we're going to reward you for being intransigent, and we're going to give you enhanced status. So what message does that send to the Palestinians? It sends to, it says to them, we don't necessarily need to make the hard decisions or make compromises for peace. If we just wait this out and we have a multi-tiered strategy, and every so often we attack Israel militarily and we fight against them, and then we get sympathy when Israel defends itself. And if we don't come to the negotiating table, but we go for this enhanced recognition of our rights, the world will still back us. So what real motivation do they have to actually do a deal with Israel? Every time they either do nothing or do something negative, they get applauded.
Let's come back to Turkey. In a different way, though. Can Turkey be not an enemy of Israel, but an ally and a strategic partner, despite all that has happened?
I think so. I think they've shown in the past that they can, and I think Israel really wants to get back to that. Israel understands that it's a shifting dynamic always in the Middle East, but I believe that the goodwill that was generated through the years of cooperation with Turkey certainly has been undermined by the events of the last couple of years. But I think it's ultimately in Turkey's best interest and in Israel's best interest to find a way to repair some of that damage that's been done and get back to being on better terms.
How fragile is Jordan? Vulnerable are they?
No one really knows the answer to that question. It's hard to get a read. But King Abdullah has been, I tip my hat to him because he's, the ruler of a place that's in essence a tinderbox, and he's got a lot of Palestinians who feel very strongly that they on a sort of theoretical level, they want to continue to fight against Israel and they want to rail against the Zionist state. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of the Jordanians and the Palestinians who are in Jordan, they want to have an opportunity to improve their lives. And I think they see that there are certain benefits that come along with not being at war all the time and not fighting with Israel.
What is it that the citizens of Israel, what is it the price that the people pay to protect them from an enemy that's all four corners of their universe? I mean, in terms of taxes, the economy, just how much money is spent for security and defense?
It's a tremendous percentage of both the taxes that the individual citizens pay in order to fund the armed services of Israel, and the amount. I haven't seen the most recent figures, but the percentage of their expenditures that are taken up by the military are significant. Israel's a very small country. It's the size of New Jersey. As you mentioned, it's surrounded on all sides by enemies who want to do it harm. So for them, they would like nothing more than to be using those funds to invest in biotechnology and nanotechnology and agricultural exploration and medical development, high tech. Those are all the things that Israel would love nothing more than to be investing in. And unfortunately, they're forced by the situation in which they find themselves to constantly be spending money and innovating in the military space as well.
Have you ever lived there?
I lived there for about half a year.
What was it like?
Well, it was great. We'll come back.
We'll be back.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams with an opportunity to own a piece of paradise in Nassau, Bahamas. Spectacular land prices, 8,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet lot, affordable prices, hilltop properties with views of the magnificent sea. Just call 242-677-3120 or 3121 or go to info@rightsidewire.com and leave your information.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
What year was it when you spent 6 months in Israel? And what was the atmosphere like then?
It was a time of optimism. It was a time of relative peace and quiet in Israel. I was there studying. I was learning about Israeli history, Middle East history, studying the language, and really using it as an opportunity to see what life is like on a day-to-day basis for the Israeli people. So for me, it was very instructive to actually live there and to be out on the streets, riding the buses, talking with people in cafes, and getting a sense of how they lived.
Share with us what you learned.
I learned that the Israeli people are very resilient, and that they, at the end of the day, want nothing more than the same things that you and I and Americans want, which is they want to bring up their kids in a world that's better than the world in which they've lived. And they want to focus on protecting their families. They want to focus on making the world a better place. There's a phrase in the Jewish tradition that's called Tikkun Olam, and it means repairing the world. And in the Jewish faith, it is a commandment of the people that they do everything that's within their power to repair the world and to make it a better place. And Israelis really have taken that to heart, and they want to repair the world. And I think that they just want to live in peace and security and have the kind of lives like you and I and the rest of Americans are so blessed to be able to lead.
You know, when we think about the Middle East, it's always conflict. It's always death. It's always the drumbeat of war and Armageddon. One of the things that we don't talk about is beyond the conflict, how these people still work together in their own way. And it will never be reported. But obviously, there was a time when Mubarak, Gaddafi, King Hussein of Jordan, when they were in power, say whatever you want to say about Saddam Hussein and others, Saddam Hussein and Iraq kept Iran in check. Iran was very threatened by Iraq. And so much conflict until they could not focus their energies on the kinds of things that they're doing now. And with all the conflict in the Middle East, what is going unnoticed is Iran is getting a free pass. We have no idea what they're doing because their attention is off them. I mean, say what you want to say about these leaders that I just mentioned, but there was stability in the Middle East. Do we have these kind of leaders today? Is there the future for these type leaders? Or is just a bygone era? Because these men were wise.
Well, I think the counterweight to Iran right now is both the West, led by the United States, but also Germany and Britain. But you raise a really great point, which is where are the counterweights within the Middle East? And that brings us back again to Turkey and Saudi Arabia, some of these countries where they don't want to see Iran go nuclear. They see Iran as a threat to them and to the stability of the overall region. And so part of what I think has to be the U.S. strategy is working with these actors who are based right there in the Middle East in close proximity to Iran and bringing them along and keeping them close in terms of working together to be a counterweight to Iran. These leaders, even if Saudi Arabia isn't really saying much, they're deeply, deeply concerned about Iran. They don't want to see a hostile regime like that asserting itself in all of the affairs in the Middle East and going nuclear. And that's part of the danger of Iran is I think what you're likely to see is if the sanctions don't work, if Israel decides not to take military action, if Iran one day surprises us all and breaks out of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty and they reveal that they've gone nuclear, then you're going to see a domino effect of all these other regimes and all these other countries in the Middle East feeling like they need to get their hands on nuclear weapons too. You'll see it in Egypt, you'll see it in Saudi Arabia and others.
It does seem as though there's been a cleansing of leadership in the Middle East where the United States has certainly had a hand. If you look at Iraq, you look at Libya, you look at Syria. I mean, these are sovereign states. Some will question whether or not you have the right to go in and remove a sovereign leader. And on a more future level, have we made the situation better by eliminating them?
Well, only some of the leaders did the U.S. have a hand in eliminating.
Some?
Some.
Okay, I'm listening.
So I would point to an example in Libya where
They did not have a hand?
the U.S. had a hand, but it was the Libyans more so. I mean,
But without the United States, that would not have been made possible.
I'm not sure about that, actually. I think it might have been. I don't think the U.S. took a very strong role in pushing Gaddafi out. Did it help? Absolutely. But it was a coalition of other countries, not
Led
just
by the United States, but they had to take a low key.
Yes.
But they had no choice.
But the Arab Spring itself, I mean, look at what happened in Egypt and the protests that were in Tahrir Square. That was not fomented by the United States. The United States did not.
Assange.
It's all contributing factors, but
He was a big contributor. That's why he continues to run for his life. But go ahead.
so
Social media is what we call it.
social media. I think it's. I'm excited to be 5 years down the road and look back on exactly how this all shakes out. I'm not very optimistic at this point, and I think that the Arab Spring has turned into a very harsh and bitter Arab winter. That's my personal take on it.
It is an Arab winter. I want to come back. I know we got to talk about Red Banyan and talk about you. It's fascinating for us because we travel the world. There are a lot of things that we are exposed to that others are not. But still, despite all the drumbeats of war and the devastation and the loss of lives, oh my God, so many lives have been lost, Israel still exists. Israel is the hope of the Middle East, and Israel finds a way to survive. But you feel that bar is dwindling, that their ability to survive and always conquer those that would seek their demise is weakening, especially with the issue of this proliferation of nuclear weapons and the threat of the sarin gas.
Well, for Israel, just to be clear, the stakes have always been high for them.
Yes.
And in the initial days of Israel, right after they declared independence, no one knew whether or not Israel was going to survive. And it looked very much like Israel was going to be crushed by all the invading Arab armies. Do I think that Israel faces the same degree of threat that it did on day one of its existence? No, I don't, because the Israelis have been successful at building up a military capacity with which to defend themselves. Do they still face a situation where their very existence could be called into question? Yes, I don't think that's an
But that has always
overreach.
been in this situation.
It's always been there.
Yes, and always will be.
Unfortunately, probably yes. But, the Israelis have more hope maybe than even you do, Armstrong.
Oh, no. I'm not speaking from a mindset of a lack of hope. I just know that if you look around and who's still standing, Syria's in shambles. Iraq is in shambles. Libya is in shambles. I mean, just look at the trajectory of this. Israel is not in shambles. They may take a few missile hits, a few terrorist attacks at cafes. They may lose some people, but overall, it seems that their resolve is strengthened, not weakened. Think about it.
They have no choice but to survive. This, and people have said, well, if Israel, why did they want to? Why did they need to reestablish their homeland? Why did they need to reestablish a state there? Why couldn't they have done it in Africa? Why couldn't we have found another area? And of course, the answer to that is that's ridiculous because it's the the homeland of the Jewish people and it's where their history is rooted. But don't for one moment ever be convinced that Israel is suffering from a lack of resolve, because they have no choice but to survive. They're not going anywhere else. This is it. This is their home, and they're not going to be going anywhere.
And I don't think their Arab enemies think they're going anywhere. I think deep down they operate from a platform of fear and insecurity and being threatened. And especially when you have a democracy where you don't have the threat of an Arab Spring or some dictator who's there for life. That could never happen in Israel. It is truly the people thrive
the people's voices are heard, and overall, people in that economy, they do very well. Different than their surrounding neighbors.
It's an oasis of democracy
Yes.
in a desert of dictatorship. It truly is.
Yes. Yeah, and there's a reason why it survives, because its people trust the leadership. They may criticize it, but they trust the leadership because it's unlike, and you don't have the hunger, the suffering, where these Palestinians do better in Israel than they do in any other Islamic country.
That's true. People in Israel, if they have the right to access a judicial system, that's very much like ours.
Oh, but Evan knows the cues on this place. He knows just when to. Can you believe we only have one segment left?
I can't. This is going so fast.
Because we have something to say. And we're going to say more when we come back in the
Wonderful.
last segment.
Let's do it.
Okay.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Whether it's their impact on prison guards, law enforcement officials, business executives, employees, or marriage and relationships, Lorette is dedicated to changing the individual and institutions around the globe. Lorette's diverse network and training courses can help provide you with the tools you need to both wisely and confidently lead, manage, and supervise yourself as well as others. Lorette Business Network, a proven system for achieving success in your business and life. Please visit their website and begin this life-lasting journey with Lorette today, www.lorette.org.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong-Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong-Williams.
Your final comments on this before we talk about Red Banyan Group.
When you look at Israel, you're going to see a miniature America, and I think we can take a certain measure of comfort in the fact that the ideals of democracy and freedom and respect for human life are still alive somewhere in the Middle East, and that somewhere is Israel, the capital city of Jerusalem.
Red Banyan Group. Talk to us about. When did you come up with the name Red Banyan?
That's great. You know, I get that question all the time, and Red Banyan Group. The banyan refers to the banyan tree. The banyan tree is a tree with these very prominent roots, and it's a lots of small pieces all coming together to form a very strong base. So at Red Banyan Group, we think that the banyan tree is a great metaphor for effective communications, because you've got all these different aspects that when they come together, it forms a very strong base, and it ties into our tagline, which is rooted in strategy. because everything we do is rooted in strategy. So the banyan tree is truly an excellent metaphor for effective communications, and that's why we embrace the banyan.
So what is it that you do, Red Banyan Group?
Well, that's a great question. I would say the simplest way of characterizing it is, for some clients, we get them in the press, and for some clients, we get them out. And this corollary to that would be our main function is to help companies and individuals communicate more effectively about their products and their services.
What is your background? Where did it all start?
I'm a communications guy. Always have been. I've been a writer and an editor my whole life.
You had to start with parents. You had to be born into somebody's household. Let's start there.
Well, apparently, I don't recall this, but apparently I was talking nonstop from a very early age, and so communication was always something that came very naturally to me.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana.
Yes.
Really?
So it was a great place to grow up. Of course, all of us who were growing up there wanted to get out as quickly as possible, and we thought it was boring, but truly it's an excellent place to grow up. Nice, good school system, very nice people, very polite. I feel very fortunate to have grown up in Shreveport.
What did your parents do for a living?
My mother was a teacher, and my father worked in the family business, which is a pipe yard.
Obviously, you didn't want to continue that tradition.
No, I had the opportunity, as did my two brothers and my three first cousins. We grew up, 6 of us, was staggered in age. It was almost like 6 brothers rather than cousins. And of the 6, none of us has opted to go into the family business. So I'm afraid that when my father and when my uncle retire, that will be the end of the family business.
Why, though?
The world changes, Armstrong, and it's a different world we live in. The business was started actually by my great-grandfather, and it was started in an era where he saw a need with the explosion in oil exploration in Texas and Louisiana, and that was what led him to start the business. And in this day and age, the business still exists, but it's not something that really held a lot of interest for my cousins and me. One cousin lives out on the West Coast. He's a partner at a very prominent law firm in San Francisco. Another one is a banker in New Orleans. Another one is training to be a rabbi in Boston. And one of my brothers is in New York working for an advertising agency. And my baby brother is actually the only one who lives in Shreveport, Louisiana, and he's working for an online marketing company.
Are your parents disappointed?
Are they supportive?
Are they disappointed?
Oh, no, I don't think so. My parents, and it's really starting with my grandfather, who was the patriarch of the family, they always believed that first and foremost, education is the key. And so they've, thankfully made it possible for all of us to have the opportunity to go to college and to choose which college we wanted to go to and to study whatever it is we wanted to study and to find our own path. I think that's served all of us well.
Mm-hmm. What is it exactly that the family business does?
Sells pipe.
Sells pipe.
And my father actually, his whole life he has also had other jobs at the same time. And so he is a licensed professional counselor. So for years he was providing counseling services and doing group therapy. And he also spends his time doing cancer support groups. And for a time, for a while, he actually had 3 or 4 jobs simultaneously and was teaching at the medical school in Louisiana as well.
So what do you think about the media in the age of social media? Just so many plethora of media to choose from. It seems that the media has lost a lot of its sting to the point where it's given rise to places like Fox News and bloggers.
Well, I think there's certainly been a saturation of the market. Anyone with an iPhone or smartphone in their pocket can become a reporter, quote unquote, at this point. And so there are so many different ways to get the media, to get your news from the media. It used to be you were watching one of the 3 networks on TV and you were reading your local newspaper and that was it. But now with the internet and with phones and these tablet computers and bloggers, we're inundated with messages. And I think part of what Red Banyan Group exists for and what we're called upon to do is to help our clients navigate this. It's very confusing. How should we be getting our messages out? How do we reach the people that we need to reach? Is it online? Is it on TV? And we help them paint a picture for them of all the different options. And they do have more options than ever before in terms of reaching their key constituencies. And we try to guide them and advise them on ways that they can reach these constituencies in order to accomplish their business goals.
What has it been like for you being an entrepreneur? You hear these stories about the fiscal cliff, the uncertainty, not understanding your liabilities. What does it do for you as being an entrepreneur now? Because it has been entirely different for you.
I think it's impossible to be a successful entrepreneur and to not be optimistic. You have to look on the bright side, because if you weren't willing to take that risk and make that leap of confidence, then you'd have to be crazy to go into this line of work, and you'd have to be crazy to ever put yourself through that. The uncertainty, putting your livelihood on the line, putting yourself out there. So I believe optimism. I started Red Banyan Group in the midst of the worst economic situation to befall our country in nearly a century. And people said to me, why are you starting a business now? And how in the world could you start a business in Florida, where the economy was hit even harder than it was in many other places around the country? And from day one, I just always believed that there was a need for the expertise and the service that we could provide, and that we would find a way to make it work. And I think when you have no choice but to make it work, you make it work.
What has been some of your biggest surprises that you can share with others who are thinking and considering doing the same?
Well, I think you until you actually take that leap, you don't understand the tremendous ups and downs, both in terms of, and I'm talking on the business side, of cash flow and the ups and downs of clients who are coming and going, but also the emotional ups and downs of some days you wake up and you're feeling so bullish and you close several accounts and you have a great day, and then the next day you could suffer a very big setback. So it's this constant undulation, the ups and the downs, almost like being on a roller coaster, and you got to have guts to stick it out.
You learned much about yourself since the inception of this business.
Absolutely.
It's all on you. There's no one you can look to. Your family look to you, but the market is your boss now. It can be tough.
That's it. It's. But to me, and you know, the person who I think of every single day as I think about my grandfather. My grandfather is really embodied the American success story. His mother died at childbirth, and so he was raised by his sister. And during the Depression, they didn't have enough money to take care of him, so he was placed in a Catholic school orphanage. He was raised by nuns in an orphanage, so he had no money, not great prospects for success. But through his own intellect and his drive, he was able to get a scholarship to study at Georgetown University, became a stockbroker, and ended up being able to create a successful career for himself and be able to put all 6 of his grandchildren through college. So for my grandfather, the lessons that I learned from him is this is an unbelievable country, and the opportunities that all of us have are there for us. And if you're willing, to strive for it, and if you believe in yourself, and if you do all the right things to put yourself in a place to succeed, it is possible in America, even today. It may be harder than it was, but this is still the land of opportunity.
Do you guys have a website?
Absolutely. We've got many. You can certainly go to redbanyangroup.com to learn a little bit more about what we do. You can visit us on LinkedIn. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, all different ways that you can reach us.
You've certainly taken advantage of all the skills you've learned in your career when you work for others.
Absolutely. And I feel very fortunate. Our team is growing. Our business is growing. We've got some fantastic clients, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with the clients we have and hearing from others who we can also assist.
Red Banyan Group. What's that website address again?
redbanyangroup.com. So that's REDBANYAN group.com.
Look, we have really covered the globe today.
Around the world in 45 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. We appreciate your perspective on the Holy Land and the Middle East. I'm glad you decided to join the elite class of the entrepreneur class. I'm glad we welcome you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, we call it the entrepreneur class. This is a very special class.
You got to be crazy. There's got to be a certain level of craziness. So I guess I look to embrace that, and I believe you do as well, Armstrong.
Well, I'm a little more seasoned at it, so I'm not as taken shocked. I don't get shocked anymore. I shocked the marketplace.
Nothing surprises you.
No, not anymore. Evan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really delightful having you in the studio. I'm Armstrong Williams. That's it.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org. Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
What we need? Soul food. Henry Soul Food. No, we need it. Soul food. Henry Soul Food. No, I like it. Soul food. Henry Soul Food. No, we need it. Soul food. Henry Soul Food. Hit me.
Home of the sweet potato pie. Even the keenest taste buds will tell you the best food on the planet. Large enough to serve you and small enough to know you. So get to Henry's at 5431 Indian Head Highway, Oxon Hill, Maryland, or give us a call at 301-749-6856.